This episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking Podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BRUTALLY and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking Podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Andreas Werling, who works for the Brands for Fans company, which makes booze products for famous bands. In this instance, we are talking about the Kiss Gin, which was actually really, really delicious. And there's a little bit of a surprise in my tone of voice when talking about it because, you know, Kiss is relatively known to not be drinkers, at least Gene. Gene is more known, obviously, for being staunchly, apparently, straight edge, doesn't drink, doesn't do anything. So it's kind of interesting to see the band go into, spirit world. And it's one of those where I think a lot of people see that bands are starting to make more beers, they're starting to get into liquors and so forth, with actually Def Leppard releasing their different brands of spirits as well through the same company. And it's an interesting way to kind of tap into something different with your fans, correlating flavors to songs or albums or whatever, and to a brand of the actual band that you're listening to and imbibing in, and technically with the drinks is really interesting, and it's something that obviously I'm talk about quite a bit on the show, so it was really kind of a no-brainer to have someone on the show to kind of talk more about that and get into that realm. And Andreas actually kind of has more of a pedigree of being in the rock and metal scene, having been the former manager for In Flames and kind of doing some behind-the-scenes work at a couple of different labels and so forth. So this was kind of initially it was about kind of talking to someone about the process of working with a band and putting out a product and so forth, and then kind of morphed into just talking about art and talking about NFT booms and so forth, and transitioning from working with a band to kind of going more behind the scenes and then getting into, graphic design work for, these bottles and these labels and all the work that goes into that. And, it was really fun and really interesting to kind of talk to someone about a different side of this space and part of the entertainment of and the business side of being in a band and the opportunities that you have to market yourself in different ways. And I think in that capacity, it's really kind of fascinating to learn how and what goes into it. I mean, as you'll hear in the chat, Andreas even showcased some things on the label that I didn't even notice, even though in the video I made of me unboxing the thing, I was like, oh, check this out. This is interesting, how I think this correlates to the band and the brand of Kiss and their iconic imagery. And to see the things that Andreas put into it was just astounding, and to see that he does it consistently with everything that they've done, it's just incredible. So it's one of those where it was just really cool to kind of get to showcase a different side of the music industry and a different side of branding and packaging and all that we don't really talk about on this show from that perspective. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Andreas, and I will talk to you all on the other side of it. Just kind of a conversation, not so much like an interview. So it should be fun. I'm actually, cool. Since I have you, I haven't opened this because I'm waiting for us to talk so I could actually talk about it. I made a little like promo video thing, which I realized I need like a 360 turner thing, so you're not trying to catch my hand out of the label or out of the focus of the camera. But as this package came, I was really surprised at how just kind of in depth, everything was with the almost kind of the Kiss Revenge looking box to it, but it makes it really hard to photograph without getting you in it. But this has been something I've been looking forward to because you are kind of the perfect guest for this show where it kind of blends the whole crux of it, which is kind of having conversations while you're in the bar with strangers essentially and over various spirits and so forth. And, obviously you come from the rock and metal world. So I guess for those that may not know, tell us a little bit about how you kind of transitioned from being on the management side in bands to kind of working with this company real quick.
Well, actually, it all started. I used to do management for In Flames a few years back ago, a very well-known Swedish metal band. And I did that for a few years. And after that, I actually did a few years in the label industry. So I worked for Sony Music for 5 years after that as an A&R and product manager. And during that time, and actually even before the In Flames time, I've always dealt with art. I always, keep drawing and creating merchandise for, friends' bands and things like that, even since I was a kid. So when the opportunity came to start working with one of my absolutely all-time favorite bands, Kiss, I just couldn't say no. So it's the best of two worlds, basically.
Smells really good.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, actually, I guess it's been longer than just a couple, but really got into gin, and I thought I hated it because, like a lot of people who are like, "Oh, it tastes too piney, it tastes too whatever."
Yeah.
What I ended up finding out through a friend of mine who became a mixologist is that a lot of people, when they say they don't like gin and tequila, I go, "It's because you drink shit gin and tequila, and that's why you don't like it." If you actually invest a little bit of money into this, you'll find that you'll be rewarded with just really crazy flavors and the potential to just make very delicious and refreshing cocktails with them. So I always have said, it's not that you hate gin, you just haven't found the right one yet.
That's right. And, it's also that type of spirit that, for each of its own. I mean, some people like to drink it straight. Some people like to have it as a gin and gin and tonic. And it's just, you have to find your own way of drinking it. But just gin has become widely popular, especially in the past few years. So
it's crazy to kind of, as someone who likes to pay attention to trends of things, kind of in music, kind of in the craft cocktail beer world. It's kind of funny. I noticed, a few years ago, blood orange seemed to be the hot new flavor in beers and a lot of other, mixed drinks and so forth. And now we're kind of seeing, I don't want to say like a resurgence of just kind of going back to making a good product that stands on its own and doesn't have to be so reliant on other things, other fads. But it does kind of seem like very much like music where it's like, I feel like we're kind of at this interesting crossroads of everything where it's like, I kind of feel like everyone just wants something to be good and they don't need all this other bullshit branding behind it and just be like, give me something that's good and consistent and I'll be there. I'll spend my money on it. And I feel like that's something I've noticed happening in both music and the spirit world, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, the thing is like the competition is hard, when it comes to, nowadays I'd say, almost every band has some sort of spirit. They have or a beer or, something like that. And, there's, with that said, you have to be really, really picky about the quality as well, because in order to have, not just slap your name on the label, on the bottle, you need to have, a good product and something that's carefully, been blended, or, a real craftsmanship to it. And I think that also, is for instance, for the Kiss spirits. I mean, we have our own in-house master blender, and he's a multi-award winning blender. He's been winning awards all over the world for spirits, for Motorhead that we done with the Motorhead rum, for Hammerfall vodka. He's an excellent guy, and it really comes down to it. I mean, sure, Kiss is a huge name, of course, but I mean, we also put a lot of time and effort into actually developing a real strong quality product for both the gins and the rums. So,
something that I find kind of interesting about a lot of bands that kind of get into this, like it was. I say this and it sucks to kind of disparage someone who actually spent time making something, but I remember doing an episode with my old co-host, and I tried the Metallica beer. And I was like, oh man, this isn't it. Like, this is not good. This tastes like shitty Heineken, which is like, I was like, I know was their go-to beer for a long time. And I go, but I kind of have this feeling, if the band was actually involved, which by all press releases and so forth, they made it seem like at least Lars or someone was involved in the making of the beer. But I kind of wanted to be like, maybe those who don't really drink beer shouldn't be involved in the process of making something or giving notes on what they look for. It should go to someone who knows what they're doing. And I feel like, by all accounts, a lot of, there are like, Randy and Willie from Lamb of God who went and helped make their NA beer. You have some people who kind of know what they're looking for and get with the people who they go to do what they do and let them do what they do with a little bit of input. But I feel like sometimes that's got to be a really interesting dynamic to work within, of someone who wants to help, but also knowing and kind of giving that feedback like, hey, you should kind of let this person do what they do. They're not going to make a bad product.
Yeah. I mean, basically, when we work with Kiss, it's quite interesting because, Gene and Paul are heavily involved in what we do. And from everything to artwork to spirit. Gene doesn't drink, obviously.
Right. Yep.
But the spirit has been approved. All the spirits that we've done are all approved by them. And, as for artwork design, they're extremely thorough. And, we really feel like they've been involved in this product, which is super fun, because then, it's genuine as well to the fans. So, and I mean, it also shows to tell. They know their brand best, and they know what works. We have our ideas, but, then they have their feedback and also their idea of, how they want it to be presented. And for instance, the cold gin that you had over there, that's actually a really interesting piece, because cold gin obviously being, one of the top anthems from Kiss since 74. And obviously that one is really special because they've never, ever done a cold gin during their entire career. So this is the very first official cold gin. And that, when we did that artwork, for instance, when I did the design for it, my idea was to pay, homage to not only Kiss, but also to their origins, since Cold Gin was featured on their very first album. So if you look at the artwork, there's tons and tons of fan details on it, like Easter eggs galore. I mean, there's
like the New York on here, the Statue of Liberty. Sorry, I have a shit reflection, but the guys on the bottle. I made a little promo video, like I said, and I kind of pinpoint to all of that stuff, and it's really interesting to just kind of see the level of detail associated with it. And I realized I'm going to correct myself because someone's going to probably say something in the comments. I said Revenge because I've been listening to Revenge a little bit more recently. I meant to say Double Platinum. That's the one I'm thinking of with the So before some Kiss fan gets on me about that.
But actually, one of the coolest details on Cold Gin is if you look at the neck, the clock on that one. That's the Da Vinci Code piece part of the artwork. So you see that there's a clock there, right? Yeah. And the clock is showing 11:23. Okay. So that's and it's also on the right side. You see, instead of a 3, there would be a 3 there. It's an E.
Yep.
So for Kiss fans, they're probably very familiar with the 23rd East 23rd Street. That's where the Kiss loft, where Kiss started. So that's a little.
Is Easter it why egg. It sort of looks like a manhole too?
No. It's the clock. I mean, the lyrics for Cold Gin, it's Cold Gin time again. So
Okay.
that's why it's a clock. And then the pointer is showing 1123. So that is the address, basically homage to the address where Kiss was founded.
Okay. Because it was funny because I noticed that, but I kept going, oh, it kind of looks like a New York sewer
Yeah.
top. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of, different. Like, didn't notice that it was a clock for some reason. And I couldn't think of what the E was. The only thing I could think of was the elder. And I was like,
No.
it's probably not that.
23rd Street. So that's the Kiss origin, so to speak. Birthplace
So
of Kiss.
when you kind of get into something like that, like, and you're going to design something, and obviously you're probably getting some input, like as you kind of see sort of the graphic around us, I went through a bit of a rebrand myself with the podcast and hit up a friend of mine who does graphic design work for a living. And, I kind of didn't want to give too much input because I was like, I'm coming to you because you're the professional in doing this, but the only notes I gave him is like, I want it clean. I want it to be easily read, but I kind of want it to feel like it's something you've seen in some way, shape, or form, but like it's kind of unique to myself. And it was kind of funny as we kind of were making this in like over like something like this where he's just showing me ideas and we can put over these graphics and so forth. When you kind of start with this, what is your process like to like when you first got, hey, we're going to make a Kiss gin? What are you thinking? Because I feel like with a band with that much history, there's so much that you could pull through that I feel like it'd be kind of hard to get lost in the weeds of what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, for like I said, for Cold Gin, it was obvious. I mean, it was back to the roots, origins, and the tribute to New York City, and also to Kiss. But there was also some history into it. I wanted to keep it as real as possible. So it's an Art Deco piece, and gin was introduced to America during the Art Deco period. So basically, that's and it was first came to New York. So stars aligned on that one. As for Monstrum, which is our hero product, which is I actually have a box of it right here. So this is the Monstrum. I don't know if you can see it.
I can. That looks really impressive.
So this one is actually based out of Creatures of the Night, and that was the idea because we wanted to make something that stands out, basically, and we want to be, have some effect to it. So the blue you see on this one, all of the blue, it glows in the dark.
Oh,
and
wow.
Also the bottle, the label also glows in the dark. And this artwork, then, if you know your history, you know that they released an album called Creatures of the Night in the 80s. And that vinyl actually came as a glow in the dark vinyl. So that became the idea for and the groundwork that was the foundation for the Monstrum. The Monstrum gin. Monstrum is also Latin for creature. So that way it fits well. But basically what I try to do is when I try to come up with a design or a concept, it's always going back to what fans would enjoy seeing. And it's also I don't want to slap a band name on a label and just call it something official. It needs to be something real, something worked through, and something that you like, something that I myself would want to buy. So a lot of research goes into it, a lot of thinking, and also how can I do something that has not been done before, or at least something semi new, but in a creative way. So. And it needs to be Kiss in this case. So, I mean, if you look at Detroit Rock Rum, for instance, our second rum we did, that is a tribute to Destroyer, which Detroit Rock City is featured on that album too, that song. So
I'll have to
just a bit of researching.
I'll have to look for that one since I'm here in Michigan and I'm only like 2 hours away from Detroit, so I have to look for the rum.
Oh, great! Yeah.
I feel like it's interesting because having done this podcast for so long and kind of gotten to befriend a lot of the people that are on the show, it's kind of funny to hear how some people get excited about, some of the branding opportunities they get to have. And, in some instances, I know there are some band people that it's like, I would love to make a drink. I would love to do whatever. But I feel like the hard part is trying to, because I feel like it's kind of alienating when you kind of get into this space because I feel like, like we said earlier, everyone's kind of doing it. So what are you doing to distance yourself from just another brand that's going to put out something for quick cash grab, whatever? But I also find that some people are like, oh, but then we're kind of worried about some of the backlash from people who don't drink, and that we're selling poison to people and all this kind of stuff. And it's really interesting to kind of see some of the trepidations in that aspect of, like, I would have thought of that, their fan base, like maybe they're more of a Christian band or whatever. And some people will be like, oh, well, like that's the jumping the shark moment for them, is like, well, if now that you're selling booze, like now I'm no longer on board. And it's like, it's really interesting. And I don't think that I would have thought of that had I not kind of heard it a handful of times. But has there been, because, and I don't want to necessarily get too much into the actual business side of things into your business, but is it something where you kind of have to pitch your ideas and to the band, or is it that they come to you and want to make something? Like, how does the relationship kind of work in that capacity?
Well, it depends on the band we're working with. I mean, now we've been working, we work with Ozzy Osbourne, we work with Motorhead, Kiss, and then we're just about to launch 2 gins with Def Leppard coming up now. So, I mean, it depends. Sometimes we get an idea and, we approach the band or the management, or, and we present the idea and see what they think. Sometimes they come to us, but we always talk it through. And, like you said, backlashes and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, yes, that could happen, but again, this is products for people who enjoy spirits or just want to give it away as a gift. A lot of people buy them just as a collectibles item as well. So, for instance, like I mentioned, the Monstrum, that's a limited edition numbered bottle, and it's also something like. When I designed it, I wanted it to be a piece you can actually have on your shelf that look good too. So, but I mean, the bands that we work with, they're all on board with what we do, of course. And you always think about how we present it respectfully, and also try to, obviously, if drinking is not for everyone, and that's completely fine. But spirits is what we do. We also, worth mentioning, we also do non-alc, and we also do like sodas and stuff too. So
that was actually going to be my next question, is potentially, are you looking into going into that route if you're not already? But sounds like you are.
We are already doing it. Yeah, I mean, our main, we this company, Umida and Brands for Fans, we are from Sweden, so we reside in Stockholm. We started our business here, and we work mainly, in the past we worked mainly Sweden and Europe, or the Nordics and Europe. But now we do, Japan, Australia, and the US. So, I mean, non-alc is definitely something we're looking into. Also, sodas, energy drinks, anything that can be drinkable.
It's funny that to see the big boom again, kind of talking about trends and so forth. It's interesting to see the NA world just growing so much in the last, I'll say 2-3 years, that I've really noticed, like, going to the various liquor stores or, the super centers, basically in some areas like Chicago, and seeing like what started as just a small shelf now is like a whole section in the store. And sometimes you'll see flavors of NA beers and you're like, that sounds better than 60% of the actual beers I've seen. Like, and even the like one of the few that I've had is, like I said, the not Deftones, the Lamb of God beer. And I remember having Willie on, and I tried it while talking to him, and I was like, I can't believe that this isn't real beer. Like, I can't believe that there's no alcohol in this, that you somehow have taken it all the way through the process, but you're left with a great tasting beer that's not beer. And it's crazy to see how far that's gone. I've not really dipped my toes into the NA spirits world yet. But I think that's, I mean, it's a logical step in the progression of everything, especially with a lot of people who still want to go hang out at bars and hang out with their friends and try these delicious cocktails, but don't want to drink. So to me, I think that it's really interesting to see that that's coming through, and it's made me kind of wonder: are we going to start seeing people who don't drink some of these NA cocktails, because now they're getting to experience the flavors that we all talk about when we go have $15-$20 cocktails and so forth, and see if it opens up a new world to them, or if it's going to be one of those where they're still kind of like, maybe not for me.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Lamb of God beer. I mean, I have to say that one is a personal favorite too. It's amazing. I've tried it in the US and it's absolutely fantastic. But it also shows to tell, because like you said, non-alc world has been growing, and I think it's because all of the amazing craftsmanship that is put into it. People are learning more and more, and learn from each other. Different brewer and distiller learn from each other. And as for the non-alc spirit side of it, I mean, we haven't done any ourselves yet, non-alc spirits, but we tried several great, there's some amazing non-alc gins, for instance. You have some even vanilla vodka was a thing that I tried the other day. There's rums, non-alc rums. There's tons of stuff coming, and I think it will only become better and better. And like you said, it's good as well because people who might not enjoy alcohol are not able to have the same experience taste wise without the alcohol. I think it's great, and it's really fun to see that the level and the quality has gone up so much the past years as well.
Something that I think has been really interesting, and I was going to work on a documentary with a friend during the pandemic because Run the Jewels had done a world tour of beers when they did the No Save Point song and beer for their song that was in that video game, Cyberpunk 2020 or something like that, or 2027. And it was interesting to see a band like that tap into different breweries literally all across the world. And through not legal means, I acquired about 7 or 8 of the 12 that they did. And it's one of those where it's just so crazy to see, that was one of the first aha moments I had where I was like, this is really cool because it's combining art, it's combining the music scene, it's combining a craft beer scene, it's combining all of these scenes that it seems like the Venn diagram would be so thin between all three, but it's interesting to see how wide of a net that actually casts to all of those communities and how they support one another. And I think that was the first time I really had kind of thought about how we now, through the internet and just having communication with one another through social media and so forth, that you're able to kind of do a lot of these things globally versus just very centric and local. You can still do a limited run of something, but you can have it limited to so many pockets of the world. And to me, that was so interesting. And I think, now we're starting to see, I see it locally here in Grand Rapids with, like New Holland working with, some other like coffee places or whatever, and, getting their beans to make coffees and so forth, that you're starting to see a lot of interesting collaborations. And it just feels exciting to kind of be a fan of this, to kind of be like, all right, who's going to do what now and make what kind of crazy flavors and so forth. And to know that, like I said, with the Run the Jewel stuff, I was in contact with a couple of the breweries to do, how did you get involved? And then with the base recipe they gave you, how did you come up with yours? And the goal is to eventually get back to maybe Run the Jewels and be like, hey, here's this documentary I worked on. Would you be interested in kind of being a part of it from your side of like, how did you pick? And then how did you pick your base for this one? But I think almost like festivals and so forth, it's something you're working on all year round now. Like you're constantly coming up with ideas. And it's like I said, it just has me excited. So I can't even imagine what it's like on your side where you're actually in it and you're like, ooh, we got this thing we're working on. And, or, hey, I got this idea because this, with that Creatures of the Night basically bottle that you showed, the fact that you were able to execute that so well, I feel like then just has to give you ideas of going like, okay, so we actually were able to pull that off. Wasn't sure if we were going to be able to.
What's next?
What's next? And like, how far can I take this now? And I feel like that's got to be the exciting part for you.
It is, especially, like working creatively. And again, like you said, with Kiss, for instance, and even with, Ozzy and with Motorhead, I mean, they got so much history. So, and to be able to do stuff like this, like you always want to top yourself, of course, but every project, we put our heart and soul into everything we do, of course. But I mean, like I said, what's next? I mean, we, is it, combining tech with, the packaging? Could, have a box that plays music when you open it? Could we have a bottle that illuminates with, in contact with a certain liquid? There's tons and tons of stuff that you probably could pull off that would be completely impossible just 10 years ago. So, I mean, you're always looking for that new thing, And another thing that, is also becoming quite a hype thing is the environmental friendly packaging. So, to think a bit about like, could we present a spirit in a plastic bottle, for instance, that is more easily recyclable than a glass, and stuff like that. You try to think outside the box, but also step into that box before someone else does it, if you know what I mean. So it's exciting times for sure.
I'm trying to remember in my dealings with Amy, did you actually have to help design the actual shape of the bottle, or no? That's not you?
No.
Okay. Because I was going to say, because what's interesting is, I was watching, I think it was like Bar Rescue or something like that, or a long time ago, and they were talking about bottles. Like when you make a bottle, there's so much that goes into just the bottle that you don't even think about. And so I was going to say, like, if you were kind of involved with sort of the bottle shape as well, that if that was going to play into some of your designs that you were thinking of, like, okay, so if we have a bottle and it's shaped like this, and it's going to be more stocky versus vertical, then I would want to do, or I could start thinking of things like this. So I didn't know if you were at least involved with, possibly from the design aspect of, I would like the bottle to be like this, because then here's a pitch I have for the artwork.
In a sense, I mean, put it that way. I mean, we have a supplier in Italy that we use, which is great, and they have a wide range of different bottles, and whatever suits our purpose. So of course, I mean, we always choose the bottle that we feel will be suitable for. For instance, if we want to do a majestic piece or a hero product like Monstrum, we want it to be big, bold, and beautiful. So I mean, obviously, then we think about the design first, and then we look for could this work with this bottle, etc. But it is, like I said, there's also with the environmental side of it. I mean, you need to think about is it environmental friendly to do like a super thick, wide bottle that would weigh a ton, and and then you stock those in six packs in each box, shipping it. You will add to weight, which would add to your more non-environmental friendly and such and such. So I mean, there's some we put thought into it when we pick and choose the bottle as well. But you also obviously want to stay true to the brand and also to the to the actual, how should I say, the actual dynamics of the design and what you're doing, basically. So
kind of shifting gears a little bit to more
Sure.
of away from this side of things, what got you into graphic design work in the first place?
Comic books. Comic books and I want to say video games, but that doesn't make sense. But comic books.
I mean, no, it does. I mean, that's still graphic design in code form.
Yeah, I always had a thing for, I mean, superheroes and that's the perfect superheroes and rock music. That's my two things, and I think that was just got me into it. Started drawing at a very early age and just been kept on doing it since, and now it's my full-time profession and I love it. So
what are some of the most iconic, kind of related to bands, some of the most iconic logos or things that, like, when you think back to, like, this inspired me to want to kind of do this on my own, like, what are some of the first records that, or whatever, that inspired you?
Well, I have to say Kiss, of course, but I mean the artwork from the early artwork from Kiss, especially Destroyer and everything, and all the aesthetics. That was what actually got me into Kiss. My love for comic books and rock music. I mean, I think I was like 6 or 7 or something when I got my first album, and just seeing those guys, and then they look like superheroes and they play rock music. It's like, hey, boom, the best of two worlds. So I think I have to say Kiss, but then, speaking from an iconic point of view, I mean, Baroness has some amazing recent stuff, amazing stuff. It's unbelievable. Mastodon, the artwork from those guys. I mean, there's so many great bands right that just now releasing some amazing artwork as well, along with their albums. So I'd say everything inspires me right now.
It's crazy to see that it seems to be, with the resurgence of vinyl over the last 10, 15 years, that it seems like we're kind of going back to, like, actual big art again, a full thing where, I was kind of looking through some of the records I have, and as I was putting them, because I put the IKEA shelves that you can put the things in, so you can kind of scroll through them that way. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of funny thinking to some of the album covers that I loved and I think are kind of iconic. And I was trying to think of, like, what makes me like them. Like, some of them are very basic and it's just kind of a very striking image. And it was funny because I was kind of thinking about this leading up to this chat, thinking about Iron Maiden, because I was for a little bit a co-host on another show where basically you go through and talk about a band's discography from start to finish. And we were tackling Iron Maiden, and we had all kind of started it well before we were going to do it because it's just such a lengthy discography. And it was one of those where I was like, I feel like, to me, obviously not being around when the band first came out, that's always the hard sell of like, well, you weren't around when this was heavy metal. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I understand that. But to me, it's like, I feel like,
you still like it.
yeah, for sure. And there's parts of it that I do like. But to me, I was like, I feel like this band initially really benefited from having great iconic artwork that didn't necessarily harken the same style, like visually, to the music. And again, I some people will be like, well, it was heavy metal back then, so yes, it did. But I look at some of the Killers especially, and I'm like, oh, this is probably like a full on like brutal metal album. And then you get it and you're kind of like, not so much. And to me, I've always been like, I feel like that was a band for me that has really always been more about the visuals than necessarily the music. And I feel like that they've always kind of leaned into that a lot more of like, okay, like here's our mascot. Where is he now? What is he doing? And bringing out these larger than life stage shows and so forth. And it's always been a very visual forward band. And when I say that, I think people think that I'm kind of disparaging the band's music. And it's like, no, I think they realized early on that this is a really integral part that they can incorporate into their music when they present it in a live format and on the shelf. And I don't think a lot of bands do that.
No, I would say for recent examples is good examples is Ghost, for instance. The artwork is always spot on, and it's like the last album, the Imperial album that you just released, is absolutely insane artwork. I mean, me as doing artwork as a profession, and when I see that, I'm like, how the F did they?
Oh, you can swear.
How many hours did you put into this? But also, there's like you said, Iron Maiden is a perfect example of mixing. They have their mascot, they have like a thorough theme going through with Eddie and all of that. And same thing with Megadeth. They have their mascot too. But also, like you said, you see the album cover and expect it to be brutal. But I mean, just you remember Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion, for instance. That artwork is
yes,
yeah. When you see that, and you be like, "What is this?" And then you hear the album, you probably think it's some sort of death metal band, but it's absolutely not. So, I mean, I think it's great to see that bands are, like I said, Baroness, Mastodon, Ghost. I mean, like nowadays that they're using the artwork more, and also that it's great seeing that now that with the the past years uprising of vinyl. I think it gives bands also more space to be creative, because during the era of just digitally, when CD and vinyl was not something that, you probably would have picked up, you listen to everything on your MP3 player or whatever, artwork became somewhat like, I don't know, secondary.
Disposable.
Yeah. But now, with vinyl being such coming up and also for the digital era where you get Spotify, you will get the artwork. You can, incorporating. I mean, it's coming back in the big time. I think it's really, really fun to see.
Well, I kind of feel like, it's been interesting talking to people, on the show about, the various DSPs and kind of where the music scene is going, as far as like, do you release albums? Do you release singles, EPs? Like, what is it? Because I've kind of constantly been enamored with this thought of like, okay, like we as fans are about 2 years behind you because of just the system of, we go to record, then, it gets mastered, and then you got to wait, 5, 6, 7 months for the record.
Yeah.
And then, so that puts a wait time on things. And then from the business side, you're looking at like, okay, where can we release the record where it makes sense with the tour? It makes sense to hopefully chart as much as we can and all of that. So like by the time it comes out, and I talk to some of these people, that's why I shifted away from doing kind of an interview about a record or whatever to just having a conversation with someone. Cause it's like, that's timeless. But because I would find that talking to someone about art that they made, they're like, yeah, I mean, and you can kind of tell that they're over it kind of, because it's like, I've already lived with this thing. I'm already making new stuff and I'm excited about that. But like, I won't be able to talk to you about that until another 2 years. So from us as fans to the artists, we're perpetually a 2-year cycle behind, but they as the artist are living in this weird thing where they live in the now of what's inspiring them to create, but then they have to go back retroactively in the future to talk about something from their past. And it's a weird space to live in because you're never really fully in any one.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Do you find yourself how long, for example, for like this, how long from when you had designed this to it now being a product? How long was that, gestation period?
Ooh, I was thinking it must be 6 months, I think,
Oh,
from
that's not
from
too bad.
yeah, yeah. But it takes a while. The process of that is, like I said, I'd say half of that time goes into just thinking, trying to get the right product. You try out certain things, you do test prints, you want to see that it actually fits, and that it comes out the way you envision and the band envision it to be. And of course, we need to, us being in Sweden and the band being in America, we have to obviously send physical stuff for approval overseas as well, and that takes some time. So, but I'd say in a nutshell, 6 months, basically, that's the lead time.
You actually just said something that kind of triggered a thought. With you saying kind of test prints and stuff like that, has there been talks of making the bottle artwork onto like physical media, like, limited and numbered posters or things like that?
Unfortunately, not. But who knows? Maybe in the future.
I was going to say, being into, you can sort of see some of them around in the background, but being into various posters, artists like Jermaine Rogers and, Derek Hess and some of the other people like that. Even John from Baroness, does limited edition versions of his album artwork and stuff. It's one of those that it gets really interesting. Like, I used to work in a screen printing company that around here that makes stuff for, DGK and a lot of bigger national brands. And it was really interesting going to Texas where this studio, or not a studio, a art space where basically they would sell various, art, but they had, Jermaine Rogers, like artist prints, test prints, all that kind of stuff. And to literally kind of see and hear, the person that curated the space, talk about the different card stock, like, oh, this was on this, and we use this kind of foil, and just kind of getting really into the minute details of it reminded me kind of working sort of in the screen printing part where it's like, I would get kind of upset where I'm like, oh, we got to work with puff ink today. Like that shit sucks, because it's like, you don't know if the print's going to be good until you run it down the dryer. And then you're like, nope. Or, whatever. Like, so it's, and even like the discharge ink, it's like, again, it's heat reactive. So until you run it down, you don't know if you have the mix right, or if it's going, like there's so many weird details. And so it's funny to see how it parallels between even the garment industry to, something as buying posters to even, I'm sure to a degree, like doing labels and stuff like that, that it's like, it's all similar, but we all have our unique things that we have to go through. And I'm sure parts of it that we're like, I fucking hate this part or dealing with this part of it.
Yeah. No, but I mean, again, I mean, it's good times to be alive, so to speak, because I mean, the range of materials available now, like you said, you mentioned foil, that has done wonders for printing, and also for, I mean, we use foil on some of our labels, we use silver material, you could do so many more things that you could do just a few years ago again. And the printing techniques is still continuously evolving. So, I mean, like I said, for instance, again, always talking about Monstrum, but this one is very special. you have gold foil, classic hot. It's cold stamped. You got the illuminating coloring on it. There's there's texturing to it. It's all of it, and it's all in one box, and it's really fun to play around with, and also being able to do that, because obviously, yes, it is pricey, but at the end it turns out fantastic. So.
Kind of speaking to a different form of art that's becoming a lot more, I think has people excited about art for like the first time, really, I guess in my lifetime, I can think of, where people seemingly want to have art in a different space, but with the NFT boom that's going on in the last year or so, is that something that really excites you to see that, like I said, people are excited of where you can go with it, what you can do with it, what it can be. Like I had Sergio from X Deftones Quicksand on a couple of weeks ago, and he's kind of getting into that. And it was funny because he mentioned something about it with the people he's working with. He goes, so we figured out we can stack music in the NFTs. And I was like, oh,
that's new.
And then he goes, exactly. And I go, so hold on, are you saying like you're in the NFTs, you can stack music so you can kind of almost have it be like a stem player where you can move different pieces of, individually, like the tracks? And is the goal to, if you collect the series in the NFTs, you can put together a song in theory? And he was like, we're kind of figuring all that out now. And I was like, oh, that's that's really interesting. Like, so it's fun to see people be excited about artwork in a completely different manner than I've really ever seen. As someone who creates art, is that something that you are looking into doing creatively for yourself, or how do you feel about that?
Regarding NFTs?
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked into it, and I mean, yes, it is certainly a trend, but I think that without sounding too old and boring, but I think that, you know, hypes comes and goes, so to speak. And right now, the NFT market is super hot. But the question is it solid enough? You know, would it get flooded, for instance? Would it become something that, you know, each and every one does an NFT, and all of a sudden the value, you know, becomes not as important anymore because something new comes up. But what's interesting, like you said about NFTs, and like Sergio mentioned, that doing something like that, having, you know, stacked layering, you know, in the music and come up with creative ideas. I mean, maybe the next level thing is to have some sort of, you know, video game that you get one episode per NFT or something like that. I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, that part is really exciting. What I maybe don't find as exciting is, you know, seeing a GIF of a guy, you know, eating a banana and then selling it for, you know, 2,000 bitcoins. I mean, that's just like, okay, come on. But again, you know, I understand the whole thing about it, and the more technology that's put into it, I mean, the more exciting it gets. And just like, again, going back to old school printing techniques, same thing there. The more technology, the more fun it gets. So it just gives you more tools to be creative, and also opens up more creativity to people because they are able to do more stuff than they could in the past. So
it's funny because, like, talking to, you know, some of my friends who are tattoo artists, it's like, you know, I was making the comment before going to see Knock Loose the other day, and, you know, someone was talking about the machines that they had gotten, and they're like, oh, I have like 10 of this one person's machines, and the guy doesn't really sell them. So the fact that this person has 10 of them, people were like, holy shit, how do you have so many? And it's like, well, I'm friends with so and so. But it was one of those where I was like, you know, it's crazy to see how, you know, even that industry has just changed. You know, like now everyone, you know, from having, you know, I made the comment, I go, do you think there are people who are tattooing now? Because a big part of the apprenticeship was having to learn how to build your own machine, like, you know, from the coils and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know if anyone knows how to build a machine anymore. I don't know if anyone knows how to.
I doubt it.
And that's what he said. Cause, you know, like now they have like the electric pens and so forth. And he's like, you know, I was a staunchly against it. And then I got one. I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier. And it works better and so on and so forth. And I was like, you know, it's interesting because I feel like that's a medium, especially in art, where a lot of those people are artists, you know, they draw, paint, whatever. But, you know, a lot of people now are, you know, using, Procreate on like iPads and so forth, where it's like, you know, you can bust out the same thing, do the same level of shading and all the same detail, but you don't have to waste the paper. And if you mess up, you just delete it and then you're fine. Like, and so it was one of those, like, I was like, you know, I think tattooing is interesting in that respect of kind of catching up and expanding. But then I was like, you know, I feel like there are those that are so like, well, you're supposed to, like, here's how, like, it's old school and kind of this code of, I don't want to say ethics, but it's like, you have to do these things because it's just how we all came up. And then I said, does it take away from the credibility of the artist because they don't know how to make a machine and all that? And he goes, I would say, no, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if you still have the skill and you can use the tools that you know how to use to get across your work, then it shouldn't matter. And he goes, but there are going to be those that are like, no, you need to, like, pen to paper. You need to know how to use your inks, you know, all these things you need to, because it's how we all learned. And I go, it's funny to be alive now, because I feel like there are those of us that are like, I kind of love the new way of doing stuff, but I'm kind of also like the old school way where I'm like, but I had to do this, like, you know, and there's this kind of this balancing of living in both worlds. So I would imagine it's interesting to kind of, like you said, and have said several times, to just kind of be in this space where you get to play with new stuff that makes your job easier, but also maybe opens you up to so much more. Like, I forget who it was. I saw a digital piece, and then basically it's like zoomed, like, you don't realize it at the time, but then the person just zooms out, and the person that created so much art within the art that it was just like, holy shit. And then it's like, that would have taken, if you tried animating, that would have taken so much longer. And I don't know if it would have had the same effect as like just being like, watch, that's and then now, like, as you zoomed out like 17 times, you're like, like whose mind works like that?
Imagine the size of a paper if you would do that old
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. You'd have to like do the old animation. Yeah.
No, but I mean, the thing is, like, as for working tools, again, I mean, that's why I'm all for, technology and development, because I think, like you said, it doesn't matter what you use. Creating art it's up here, So and here, that's what you use to make art, and whatever tools you use to produce your art, I'd say, to each of its own. I mean, for my part, when I started out, obviously there was pen and paper, and then you had a scanner, and then you had to, trace the artwork if you wanted to be clean in digitally. Nowadays, I can just, I have my Wacom tablets, and I can do it draw directly on screen, or I can do it with a table tablet. And I mean, it's just development. And again, it's all if you have the eye and you have the creativity, the tools doesn't matter. So, I mean, obviously for a tattoo artist, it would make sense if you know how to use the right ink, of course. But I mean, as for tattooing itself, I mean, if you just know how to use the pen and follow the line straight, I mean, you're good to go. So.
It's just interesting to kind of see, because it's one of the few mediums of art that I have spent a lot of time in, to where it's been interesting to kind of even see like some of my friends that are like, oh, you're using this. Like, I was commenting to my one friend when he was going, I was like, it's kind of sad that like you don't hear the zzz as much as you used to anymore. I was like, that kind of was sort of I don't know, just kind of becomes like this Pavlovian effect of like, all right, I'm here, and like this is part of the experience. Like now it's quiet, and now it's just quiet, so you're just kind of like,
yeah. But at the same time, machines develop. I mean, the old school machines. Like I remember when I got my first tattoo, I had this old school sailor looking guy. I mean, he must have been like 75 when he did my first tattoo or something. He had this old school, really rattling kind of machinery thing going on. But I can tell you right now, that tattoo looks like fucking shit. The new stuff I have, that's I've been tattooed with the pencils and all that. It doesn't scar the skin. You get more precision. You get fine line artwork. I mean, come on. You get better art. So
yeah, I think what's crazy to me is just seeing how far the aftercare market has come. Like with Saniderm now, like for a while, like the only thing that sucks about the Saniderm is like pulling it off is like a whole new level of like this sucks, because you're like this is like it's like ripping off the worst, most industrial Band-Aid ever. But the results speak for itself, and I think it's just crazy to see how between, and that's the other thing that's kind of been interesting about the tattoo world is like, it also kind of brings into the medical profession to a degree. So like, they're looking at aftercare for, burn victims and so forth, and after surgeries, and being able to utilize some of the same things. For a while they were using the same stuff that you would go under your meat at a butcher's counter to, soap up all the shit. So it's funny to see how some industries are very much aligned with one another, but at the same time are completely different.
Yeah, sure is.
Kind of wanted to go back a little bit to, working in touring and so forth. How long had you actually toured with the band, or bands that you worked with?
So, I mean, when I worked with In Flames, for instance, I did not go on tour as a tour manager or part of the tour crew, but of course I did go on the road with them from time to time. Loved it, hated it sometimes as well. I do not envy the souls that have to be out on the road for 6 months and then come back, see the inside of their door, their house, and then go back out again. I respect it, but it's not something for me. So,
well, that was going to be what I was going to ask. Was it hard to leave? Because the limited touring that I've done with, and most of it in cramped trailers and vans and all that kind of stuff, it's like there's a part of me that's like, this fucking sucks, I hate it. But then there's part of me, when I look back on it, you're just kind of like, man, there's just something to kind of be said about like just the fuck it nature that you have to be like, all right, I'm gonna go do this, and I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And also obviously some touring parties, they've been around for ages, touring with the same bands, and they're like a huge family basically. So I understand that concept. I mean, some guys, maybe their road family is more of their real family than their actual family. So I mean, for each of its own. I mean, I think it's not for everybody, but it's fun for some.
Was it a bit daunting to kind of leave what you had kind of known with managing and kind of working in the music industry to kind of go to something else? Was there a bit of a trepidation of like, will this work?
Not really. I mean, basically, management is obviously a full-time job. But there's also a time where, for instance, for In Flames, they've is a constantly developing and uprising band. They're still, what is it, 30 years in the game, still at their peak of their career, constantly and just moving up. So I mean, they were left to good hands, and I just felt like moving into the record industry was something I wanted to try out. And working with other bands, I worked with for product management for AC/DC, Foo Fighters, Judas Priest, just new experiences in life, and it was a great time. So, and even now, working with brands for fans and Umida, I mean, we're still working in music. I'm still working in music. It's just that we're doing liquid merchandise, so to speak. So,
I always feel like that's kind of the interesting thing of hearing people who traverse kind of through the music industry in different ways. Like sort of your story sort of mirrors mine, while you're infinitely more successful in what you've done than I have been. But it's like, I tried the band thing, didn't work for me, then ended up kind of doing booking shows for a while, and then kind of got tired of dealing with the business side of things, like mainly the money side of things, where you're like, are we really arguing about,
how many towels?
I mean, there's that. I mean, working with, but I didn't end up getting to work with Naughty by Nature, but I remember, they were very interested in coming through here. I'd put together a decent proposal for the money that I thought could work. And then it was just, getting the writer, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're having me spend almost another $7,000 on bullshit. And then like, I kind of called the dude out on it. I was like, okay, like these condoms that you want, I just saw them. Tretch literally throws them into the crowd. Why do I need to spend the equivalent of $70 on condoms for him to throw them into the crowd? How about I just keep the money, or I pay it to you? Like, how about we just take that off and it just goes into the money that I owe you? And it's like, well, no. And I'm like, this part of it is so fucking stupid to like literally be arguing about condoms with somebody, a grown man. So it was just like things like that kind of get a little bit old to then, like I said, like writing about going to shows and so forth, to then doing this. It's like, I've constantly talked about, it's not that I don't love the things that I did, and, I would still love doing them. But when the passion kind of isn't there, or more to the point, at some point you realize like maybe this isn't for you anymore, and you need to pivot and find what you want to do, and what ends up kind of inspiring you to keep wanting to do the thing over and over and over again. And this has been one of the few things where I've been like, I guess this is what I was kind of meant to do. And I've found more success in doing this than any of the other things I've done. But I find it kind of weird because I don't feel like this is really akin to being in the industry, even though I guess it really is. And it's kind of weird because, like I said, I have a lot of people who are like, oh, you're good at talking and communicating. And I go, that's not a skill. Everyone can do that.
Well, yeah. Depends on how you see it. I mean, and also I think everybody's journey is different. Some people, I know people that are extremely high up in the hierarchy in the music industry, and they started out working as, busboys, or, some guys used to work in, gardening, and now they're one of the most hired guitar techs in the world, basically. So every journey starts differently, and I think you end up where you end up, and you're the only one who can decide how to get there. Sometimes it takes a lot of time, sometimes you get there fast.
Absolutely. It's funny, I was thinking recently about so Susie Cole, who is like the head of the rock and metal. Okay.
Yeah, I know Susie. Yeah.
So Susie is actually from here and used to be a DJ on our local radio station.
Oh,
so to see how far her career has gone from where it's like, you were just on the radio here like 2 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever, like not even the good slot, like to now running, the rock and metal department of Apple, like one of the biggest, DSPs that exist. And it's like, it's fucking wild. And it's one of those that, like, I constantly look at her and what she's done, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter where you are or where you live or your background. Like, you can take this anything as far as you want to go, as long as you have the passion and desire.
I mean, it's the same thing for me. I mean, I come from a small town in Sweden called Karlstad, which is close to the Norwegian border on that side of Sweden. And I mean, from my hometown, there's absolutely no celebrities to be mentioned. No disrespect, but there's like, it's a small town, less than 100,000 living there. So, but I mean, I took my way out of there, and I'm, worked my way up and live in Stockholm now and work with what I do. And just like for Susie, I guess it all comes down to opportunities. And when you see something, grab it, and keep struggling. And then if you have a goal, just run for it. And like I said, sometimes it takes a few years. It might take 10 years, 15, or it could take 2 weeks. It all depends on opportunities. I think the key is just to grab it once you see it, and then keep struggling. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's it's something like you need to do something you enjoy doing in order to make it successfully. And to get there, you also need some stuff in your backpack as well, some learnings and some tricks and tools to be able to do it as well. So yeah,
I think it's funny. I was thinking the other day, listening to someone complain about where they kind of were with their career or whatever, and I stopped them for a minute and I go, you realize, like, when you started, because like I've known this person for a while, and when they started at the company, and I was like, when you started, you said, oh, I wish I could get to this, or I wish I had this, or you said that these were the goals you kind of wanted within the company and where you're at. And I go, and now you're like, you surpassed those and you're still not happy. Like, I was like, why don't you take a step back and realize like what you've accomplished and realize you've gotten what you want? And I go, and actually you're kind of giving me this perspective, I guess I haven't thought of for myself, where it's like, we never stop to really appreciate what we've gotten and what we've accomplished, because we're kind of, I think, too in it. And also we are constantly looking at the thing we're either working toward or whatever, but we never really take the time to go like, holy shit, I fucking did X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Good on me. Or like just taking the time to reflect on that. And I feel like that's such a kind of problematic way that we exist, where we never appreciate what we literally have or what we've done, and taking stock in it. No. Yeah. And because, like, as you said, it's living in the struggle, and that we always feel like that's kind of the mindset we have, is like, oh, I'm still in it, I'm still struggling, or I'm still whatever. So it just kind of, as you said, that kind of reminded me of that.
So sometimes it could actually be a good thing to also not be satisfied with what you do, because continue to challenge yourself to set new heights, and I mean, it could be a good thing as well, but also, like you said, sometimes you just need to take a step back and give yourself a good old pat on the back, but also, still aim higher all the time. That's how you get there. So
it's funny, that has been a point of reference that I've said that I think kind of has I don't know how old you are, but I was to say, like, I'm going to be 38. And so, like, I constantly was thinking, and it was a talking point during therapy, where I was like, my therapist is like, why don't you ever feel like you're good enough for X, Y, or Z? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I guess it stems from, growing up and you'd get like an A, and then you were like told like, that's good, but you didn't get an A plus. And it's like, I understand, like, the mentality is don't settle, always strive to do better. And I go, but the adverse, I think, also kind of happens, where you're just kind of like, oh, well, like, guess I'm just not doing well either. So it's funny that, like, depending on how you kind of land on that, like when you hear that, it kind of either inspires you to keep going, or sometimes will be kind of like a defeatist mentality where you're like, all right, well,
maybe it's not that you're not doing well, it's you're doing the best in this moment. You know what I mean? So it could also be that, it's not that you're not successful. You're successful from where you are right now, and then the next step is being even more successful. So that could also be a way of seeing it,
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, and we kind of talked about it a couple of different ways, but perspective on things, and kind of getting the most out of the tools you have, and presenting it the best you can. What are, I mean, we're kind of in the midpoint of this year at this point. And we kind of talked about, like, I had asked how long it had taken from start to completion for this bottle. What are some things to kind of looking at a business, we're in the middle of the, probably quarter two at this point, you're looking at 3 and 4, and probably projecting into what you'll be doing next year for projects. What are you excited about to end this year? And maybe if you can, what are you excited about for next year?
Well, I can't say too much what we got in the store. Coming up now will be Deford, and that's amazing, and also to work with kids will be amazing. So that's the 2 things I'm really looking for to see and to experience. And without saying too much, we got some extremely cool stuff coming up for this year and also next year. So we got some really great stuff going. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
What is something design-wise that you've always wanted to do and haven't gotten to do yet?
Good question. I can't actually think of anything right now. I mean, again, being a huge Kiss fan, I would say if it wasn't for Kiss, I would have said Kiss, something for Kiss. But now I've done it 4 times, so I mean, I'd say I'm just excited for the next ventures as well, of course. So, I mean, we'll see where what I will think about in the future. I can't come up with anything right now, unfortunately.
It's funny. I almost thought maybe you would say like, "Oh, I want to create a comic," or something.
That would be cool. We actually, I didn't draw it myself, but we actually did a comic for In Flames some years ago. That with a very, very talented person called Blake Armstrong. He's also the guy behind the last 3, I think, In Flames album, the artwork. He works in movie posters and does for Spider-Man and all that. So we did a comic book called Jester's Curse that we actually had on Comic-Con in San Diego a few years ago. So it's almost ticked off that box. I haven't done it myself, but almost.
I think it was crazy. I remember, again, kind of talking about album and artists and so forth. It was really cool for a while to see Alex Party doing so much with different bands and getting to see him work with In Flames on I can totally I remember the artwork and I don't remember the album that it was for. Sense of Purpose, I think, is what it was. But it's been crazy to kind of see him grow. I mean, he just recently was a part of that Top 70 project where he made baseball cards, and it was really cool to see, again, just kind of how art's creeping into some of these other things and becoming not a commodity necessarily, but becoming something that people want to collect.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Party and Derek, I mean, amazing artist. Blake, amazing artist. There are so many good artists out there right now, especially that do album artwork. And like you mentioned with posting, there's Garage Land, who sells a lot of posters from different artists that just blows my mind every time I see new stuff coming up. But it's like you said with Party, it's amazing that he's come so far as well. I love his style, by the way.
It's so uniquely himself and so different, and obviously him. But it's crazy that even like, after doing the couple of used records he did and doing Gym Class Heroes and In Flames and so forth, it's like you knew it was his, but it never felt like oh, this is just what he does for somebody else. It felt like it was a part of that band's, like an extension of that band. And I always thought that was a really interesting part of his art, how he's able to do that. And I don't think people understand how, maybe even saying that people probably won't understand what I mean, but I feel like that's so hard to do, to be so obviously you in a creative space and art like that, but still give it the flavor of what the band is too. Yeah.
I mean, I have my 2 favorite artists for the past years, and I just can't get enough of it. It's, one of them being Dave Shaw, and the other being James Jean. I mean, those 2 guys and their artwork. I mean, they do have a very, especially Chae, he has a very specific style of what he does, coming from the graffiti scene. But I just love it. Can't get enough of it. And the art pieces he does, it's just mind blowing. James Jean, that's different level. I mean, he's crazy good. So if you guys haven't seen them, check those 2 out.
So I assume you're doing this right now in your art space, because I can see what looks like Micron pens behind you.
Oh, it's actually just unfortunately it's a whiteboard only. But
oh, is it? That's a whiteboard. Okay.
Yeah, it's a separate room in our office here in Stockholm.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, like, I saw like whatever it is on over your right shoulder. It looks like on the shelf. Oh, I meant on the shelf, the little bottles.
Oh yeah, that's some samples that we got actually from different products that we done. So there's some whiskey, some gins, and whatnot. They look like this usually when we get them. It's
sample size
like that.
Yeah. It's so I was gonna say, I thought potentially that was like an art space for you, but I was gonna say it's really surprising that you don't have a bunch of art all over your space.
Oh, yeah. I do, but just not in this room, unfortunately.
What is that? Is that something that's hard for you to do, to have like space, like where you can actually present it all in a way that you feel gives each piece its own place to
I'll
be?
put it this way: if I will put up all my art that I love on in my office, I would need to get a new office because it's just going to be too much. So I'm a huge collector of prints, so I got a bunch of prints actually in my house. Prints from some great prints from signed by artists like from Billy Duffy from the Cult, and I got one from Ace that is Frehley signed from Kiss, and one from Till Lindemann from Rammstein as well. So I got a bunch of it, but I love collecting.
Yeah, then the hard part is then spending all the money on frames.
It's not cheap.
No, no. That was like the funny thing with the prints that I got from not Alex Party, from Jermaine Rogers. They were like artist prints and test prints, and we had only been in San Antonio for maybe an hour, and like I had already dropped like $400 on like 2 posters, and then my wife's like, well, all right. So that was a thing we did. And I was like, hey, at least we got 2 bottles of wine for free.
Yeah, exactly. Something good came out of it.
Yeah. But it can be a very expensive other hobby as well.
Yeah. Modern day art collecting, that's what it is. So
what, have you, so like no one has ever seen it because I've never shown it, but I have a giant Coliseum, show poster from when they played here in town right before they broke up, and it's one of those, it's a Death Wish poster, so it's obviously with Jacob Bannon, like, and almost anything he does is just large and very a lot of detail and all that kind of stuff. Is show posters and things like that, is that something you ever really did or would be interested in doing? Because I feel like with a lot of, like, especially with the Kiss bottle, with you saying like, oh, here's like these little details, I feel like you getting into that space and creating limited edition art for a band, I feel like you could just bring out so much of that into something, if you haven't already.
I've done a few actually, but no. I've done some touring posters, but I haven't done actual print posters, like some stuff you sell, unfortunately. But absolutely, that would be amazing. And it's always so fun to do as well. I mean, I just saw Tool the other day here in Stockholm, and those guys, for every show they have a new poster, and that artwork, man, that's like, I don't know what that guy has been eating when he did that art, but it's like, give me some, because those mushrooms must have tasted really well. I mean, it was crazy nice. No disrespect, but that was like the best insane artwork I've ever seen. So it'd be fun to do sometime.
I think that's just the thing that I think is interesting, like the band, and obviously I'm sure it's not cost efficient for some bands to do that, but I always appreciate the bands that have like the limited edition poster for the day, or as some bands, if someone in the band is able to do it, the drum doodles or the drawings on a drum head, Jordan from Every Time I Die, I think being one of them, because he would usually do something based on the sports team of where they were. So you'd have his take on the logo of, whatever team they're playing in the city of. And just seeing, again, it's different ways to see art be a connection between music and fandom and so forth, and still actually able to support the bands that are on tour and probably need the extra money to get around.
Beer money, as they say.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I love that, and I mean, I think it's great when bands do it. I know that bands at all levels do it as well. I mean, Kiss, for instance, Eric Singer, as far as what I've seen, he signs drum heads and they sell them at the shows, and Tommy Thayer signs MIDI guitars that they sell at the shows, and I think that's great because, and I mean, that's signing is one thing, but like you said, doodling on drum heads, or like it's a unique piece of art, and it's handmade, so I mean, it becomes extra valuable when you get it. So
yeah, I'm very excited to see. I'm interested to see if anyone will kind of go. I mean, Eric from Night Versus is kind of the only one I've seen doing it, where he took a lot of his like mandala style drawings, and making that a design that goes on the symbols for the company he worked. I think it's Zildjian. But I'm interested to see who's going to be the next person to kind of incorporate their art into literally the other side of their art, where it's like it's on their guitar, it's on their mic stand, it's on their whatever, and seeing that get represented in a different capacity.
I hope that my good old friend Bjorn from In Flames start doing that. He is, not many people know that, but he is an amazing artist. He
Is he?
is crazy good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that's an idea you should shop to him to do and make for a custom guitar.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really great getting to talk to you, and
Likewise.
the like I said, and I'll send the crudely made video I made of getting this box. But I had kind of, like I said, seen a lot of like the skyline and the characters in the New York City. I didn't know about that one, so now I almost want to go back through and be like, oh, and by the way. But like, I'll just say in the intro and outro of the episode that I totally did not catch that one.
Awesome.
But I feel pretty good. I caught most of them.
Yeah. No, but it's there's a lot of things put into that one, and more fun stuff to come. So
I'm very much looking forward to seeing what else you get to create and bring out, because like I said, and like you had said, there's, with the band you're working with, there's so much history and so much legacy, and to get multiple stabs at it, like with Kiss and with sounds like you're doing too with Def Leppard, there's so much you can do with that, and the iconic fonts and stuff like that, and just all the things that they're known for. Feels like almost a very fulfilling creative thing to do, because you're like, oh, there's the
it's an honor,
the well is so
Yeah.
full. But thanks again for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Where can everyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
Well, you can find the spirits if you go in America. You can go to drinkitupbykiss.com, and that's where you get your spirits, Kiss spirits. And also make sure to be on the lookout for the new Def Leppard gins, which will be highly exclusive and will come out very shortly. So
awesome. And anything for you personally to follow your art or anything, or do you not have a separate pick?
I'm not that interesting.
Fair enough.
No, unfortunately, I don't have any socials more than my personal. So, but maybe, who knows, in the future? Who knows?
Fair enough. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and good talking with you.
You too, my friend. Have a good one.
So that was my chat with Andreas. Again, really want to thank him for taking the time. I honestly, I've only had the Kiss gin at this point. I'm very much actually looking forward to trying a lot of the other things, the rum, the Def Leppard spirits. I would like to actually try the In Flames stuff. So there's plenty of product out there that I'm very much looking forward to getting and trying, solely based on how good the Kiss gin was. Actually, for a little bit of a plug, that not that Kiss needs it, but having had my open housewarming party thing recently, where friends and family came over, most of my family, grew up on Kiss. So when they saw the box sitting with the rest of my alcohol, I was like, well, let's try some. And everyone's like, no, it seems like really expensive and this, that, or the other. I was like, I mean, it's really not. It's actually, it's a great price point at about $40 for the bottle. But beyond that, I was like, it was given to me, and I'm a firm believer that, the whole point of drinking with people in a social gathering is to, camaraderie and just, togetherness and sharing an experience. So kind of giving and getting to celebrate, the purchasing of our home and sharing it with, my family, and kind of sharing this other thing, the fruits of my labor, I guess, as it were, for the podcast, was really something I'm not going to forget. And on top of that was actually, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Like I said, it's a good product. They would drink it on its own, even if it didn't have any affiliation to any band. I think that is the test, too, of this product, is that it tastes good regardless if Kiss was involved in it in any way, shape, or form. And I think, obviously talking with Andreas about that the product has to be good first and foremost. Beyond that, then it's a matter of the integrity of, making sure the branding and so forth is great. And I'm going to say, once again, the company knocks it out of the park. The packaging looks great for everything that they've done. The bottles look great. I'm looking forward to, like I said, trying some of these other things, these other spirits, and seeing what kind of flavors they're able to pull out for these other products. But can't speak highly enough about the Kiss Gin. If you are a gin fan, I would highly recommend getting it. Like I said, great price point. Bottle looks great. I mean, it makes just even a great souvenir if you don't even want to drink. So if you would like to keep up with all things Brands for Fans, you can simply go to brandsforfans.com. That'll be your landing page for all the products, the descriptions of everything. You can see the bottles up close. You can get an idea of where some of these items are actually for sale if they're in your area, or can just be shipped to you through the website. like I said, I need to get more of these things, so I will foresee a lot of my money going to these guys very soon. If you like keep up with them on Facebook, you can at Brands for Fans, Instagram at Brands for Fans. I didn't see them on Twitter. They don't advertise that they have a Twitter. And if you would like to keep up with Andreas, I found a Twitter for him, but it looks like it hasn't been used in years. And he's not really active on socials, as you heard him say. So I would say just stick to following them, the Brands for Fans, on everything, and go from there. Keep up with what they have going on. Like I said, they just released the Def Leppard brand line of spirits. So they're out right now on that stadium tour. So maybe it would be good for you to buy some and, enjoy some in the parking lot before you go pay, $15 for a beer or $18 for a very small cocktail. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, you can go to Bruce Speak Pod on all the socials. You will find us there. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can do that at patreon.com/Bruce Speak Pod. If you would like to keep up with me, send me a comment, send me a suggestion for someone on the show. Email me at brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that's important. You can do that on pretty much everything now, to some capacity. And on that note, we're all done with this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends if so inclined. And we will see you next week, where our guest is Jesse Hubbard of Punk Rock and Cocktails. And that was a fun one. And I can't wait to share that episode with you all. Until then, have a good one.